Thanks everyone for joining the webinar today, Coding and Careers, Getting Started with Gatsby. I want to give a warm welcome to everyone who's joining us. And it looks like we have quite a few people still logging in still. So we'll give you a minute to join, and I will start with a couple of announcements. First of all, this webinar will be recorded. So if you miss any portion of it, the recording will be on our website later today. Also a reminder that everyone is on mute except for the presenters and the organizers, of course. So if you have questions, please submit them in the question chat window, and we'll be sure to get to them. We've set aside plenty of time at the end of the webinar to get to questions. So just submit them throughout the webinar as we go, and then we'll make sure we have time at the end to address them. Okay, now I'm going to introduce our speakers. I'm really excited to have these community members join us today. So Shaundai Person is a front-end JavaScript developer and diversity and inclusion advocate and speaker. She's based in Atlanta, Georgia, and Shaundai works as a junior UI engineer at SalesLoft, building the front-end features of the core platform. And Shaundai is joined by Will Johnson, who is a community engineer at Egghead. He likes helping people network to get their dream jobs. So we'll hear from both Shaundai and Will about their personal stories on how they got started and switch careers to move to a career in tech. We're also joined by Gatsby's Lennart Jörgens. Lennart currently lives in Germany and works on the Gatsby open source product and builds popular themes for our users. And in his free time, he enjoys long hikes with his dog and capturing those photos. And I've seen some of those photos on our company Slack channel, and they are great. So I want to give a warm welcome to our speakers and presenters today. One reminder is if you want to tweet about it, our Twitter handle is @GatsbyJS. So feel free to continue the conversation there, to chime in and let us know if you have questions there or how's it going and what you think about the webinar. So we're actually going to start with a poll. So I'm going to launch this poll. Everyone should see this question pop up. And the question is, I've built a site with Gatsby, and either yes, no, not yet, or too bad I don't have cake that I can share with you. But if you're a cake fan, you can choose that option. So if you'll just take a minute to put in your answer to that question. Okay, great. We're getting quite a few responses now. I'll give you just a couple more seconds. All right. I'm going to close the poll now and show the results. Okay, great. So it looks like quite a few people here have already built a site with Gatsby. Some newbies, which is awesome. You're very welcome. And oh, I'm so glad to see that there are cake lovers here as well. Okay, now we're going to switch it over to our first speaker. And Shaundai is here, and I'm going to pass the controls over to her. And I'm really looking forward to hearing about her experience. So Shaundai, you should have the controls, and I can see your screen now.
Awesome, and you can hear me, okay?
Yes.
Awesome.
Yep.
Thanks everyone for having me, and thank you, Linda, for the great introduction. So my session is called From Cold Calls to Code Calls. I think I'm really clever. A little bit about me. First off, how to pronounce my name. My name is pronounced like a day of the week, Friday, Saturday, Shaundai. I am currently a junior UI engineer at SalesLoft, headquartered in Atlanta, Georgia. I've been with SalesLoft since April of 2019, but actually only just moved into engineering last month. So I was in sales for the past 12 years, including my previous time at SalesLoft. So we'll talk a lot about that and my career journey in this session. On a personal note, I am originally from Worcester, Massachusetts, which is about an hour or so away from Boston. And I moved to Atlanta, Georgia when I started with SalesLoft. And I'm also the mom to a fabulously adorable little now 3-year-old. Okay, so today what we'll talk about is, or what I'll talk about is my career journey. So where I started, which was sales, why engineering, how I got into engineering, and then for anybody who's looking to make a career switch into engineering, whether you're coming from a non-technical role like I was, or whether you're just looking to make a pivot from one technical role to another, hopefully I'll leave you with some takeaways that will make your journey a little bit easier. So how did I get into engineering? So for me, software engineering was actually one of those things that I always said, if I had a magic wand or a time machine, that I would go back and do. So 2004, this was the year that I went to choose a major. When I was going to pick a major, I chose business. Engineering, like anything that had to do with computers, none of that was on my radar. And there are a few different reasons for that. It's actually not even that I didn't like it. I did. I just didn't want anyone to know about it. And the reason why was, and I'll blame the media in the 90s, I associated computers with nerds, like the worst kind. So I'd have to be a man, first of all. I'd have to have glasses, and sorry, men who are nerds, that's nothing against you. I'd have to be a man with glasses. I'd have to be socially awkward, sit in a dark room all day doing math. Maybe not even math, but I'd need to know how to translate zeros and ones into something meaningful. And for 18-year-old me, it just was not appealing. The funny thing is, little confession, I am actually a lot of the things that I just described. I grew up with the worst eyesight. I am pretty socially awkward. I'm even really good at math, but again, as 18-year-old, I didn't want anybody to know that. So what I did was I went to school for business because I found entrepreneurship to be fascinating, because I could use my creativity and I thought I could come up with some idea and invention. I could go to school for 4 years and then get, perfect grades, know everything that I needed to know about starting a business. And then by age 23 at the latest, I would be a billionaire. So this was the destiny. This is what I had the vision for myself. Instead, I found myself in sales and I'd stay there for another 12 years. Wasn't quite a billionaire, but I was actually really successful. Sales was something that I was good at. And so what you see on the screen are some of the accolades that I had at recent sales positions. On the left-hand side, this was from my time at Serious Decisions, which was recently acquired by a company called Forrester, and I was selling sales and advisory services. Within my first 6 months, I got 175% of a full year's quota. You don't really need to know what that means. All that is really important here is that I was one of the top reps, and so I won one of the trips that they paid for their club, which is an all expenses 10-day paid trip to go to Vietnam for myself and one other person. So the pictures on the left are me in Vietnam. The middle photos are from the middle photo is from my last year at MathWorks. I attribute my time at MathWorks to my love for engineering. I was selling software, if you're familiar with MATLAB or Simulink, selling software to literal rocket scientists and engineers. And so my last year there, 2018, this is my trophy for getting 110% of my sales plan. And then the last photo is from SalesLoft. Earlier this year, about a month before COVID really hit hard in the US here, and I was on stage with our CEO and company president, winning an award as one of the top reps, winning a trip to Puerto Rico that I never actually got to take. So I was good at it, but sales itself was never really a passion for me. There is an entrepreneurial aspect to sales, and that's what I loved, and that's why I got into it in the first place. But even as successful as I was in sales, I felt like there was something different out there for me. Okay, so fast forward to 2015. This is when I decided to pursue my passions the first time. And I pursued my passions for entrepreneurship by quitting the workforce altogether and going into business for myself. So enter Nature's Batch. That's the name of my company, or was my company. And it started out as an online only company. And I used Shopify to power this e-commerce website where I sold basically anything you would see at Whole Foods. So like organic, baby care, pet care, self-care, and of course food. And I could use the sales skills that I learned to build the business. I could go knocking on doors, I could go sending emails, creating value propositions and all kinds of good stuff to get these big deals. I did get some really big customers, But what I found was the most exciting was learning Liquid, which is Shopify's Ruby-based language, to customize the Nature's Badge website. And eventually it got to the point where people were reaching out to me to pay me to customize their websites for them. So that was eye-opening because I'm starting to realize that, wait, maybe I can make a career out of this. So I think about maybe creating like a whole new business where I'm just building Shopify websites for people so it could be fun and I could get paid. Then 2017 comes, plot twist. I find out that I'm pregnant. And so I went back into the workforce. At the time, there were several different things that were going through my head as I made this decision. So I had a baby, or I was going to have a newborn very soon, and I needed to choose the path of least risk, the safe path. I knew sales and I knew I was good at it. And so this made sales the safe path for me, or the known path. I also had very freshly graduated with an MBA, and I had quite a bit of student loan debt that I was still paying off. So between that and my baby, I didn't have the money or the time to get the CS degree or the bootcamp certificate that I thought I needed to be able to move into software development. So I completely just pushed that idea out of my head. My aha moment though came when one day, thank you targeted ads, I saw an ad for Codecademy. And one of the comments was from a developer who said, you don't need a degree, you don't need a boot camp to move into the field, you can be self-taught. And this was the first time I'd heard that term self-taught. So this sounded like a good option for me because I could dabble in it a little bit, see if I liked it. I could even start down one path. I started down web development path. And then if I didn't like it, I can go down a different path, learn a different language. And I could also pace myself and work around all of the different obligations that I had. Also, it wasn't expensive at all. And so what I decided to do was to try it, make it a goal to do maybe a half an hour a day, a couple days a week, and then just see where it takes me. And I loved it. So a half an hour for me turned into an hour, turned into 4 hours some nights. And so this is what a day in the life looked like for me. Now, I put a little disclaimer on here. This is what like the ideal rainbow unicorns fairy princess land ideal day looks like, but as a parent and as a human, no day is ever perfect, so it doesn't align with that. But the key theme here is that it took what I call this maniacal level of prioritization. So everything that you see in my schedule are the things that are the most important for me to get done. I wanted to get everything done. I wanted to do everything, but I really needed to cut things out and focus on the things that were most important. So 6 o'clock, wake up, workout, really important for me to one day get these rock hard abs. And then it's important for me to do a good job at the job that I have now, the one that's actually paying me. So dedicated work time until 5 p.m. when I pick up my son from daycare, and then spend time with the most important person in my life, who is my son. 9 o'clock, he goes to bed, and then I would start coding or watching a coding course. I designated half an hour, but a lot of times because I loved it so much, it turned into the wee hours of the morning that I was coding. So for the people that are looking to make a shift and you're balancing a lot of different priorities, and I'm a single parent, by the way, so you're balancing a lot of different things, you absolutely can do it. You may not be as fast as, you know, Emily down the street, but you can absolutely get things done. And so this is where I am today. I'm at my same company at SalesLoft, and I made a pivot to a completely different career path. I interviewed, I did a project, I got the job, and I'm living my dream. And so remember what I said before about choosing the safe path? I realized along the way that the safe path for me was whichever one I was the most passionate about. And when I thought about the type of mother I wanted to be for my son, I didn't want him to ever think that I held back in life just because he was born, when in fact it's the exact opposite. Him being born gave me the strength to pursue what made me happy. And so my thought was, a happy mom who's fulfilling her potential is best equipped to raise a happy child. So if you're thinking about making a career switch, here are some tips that I promised you. And now we could have an entire webinar on any one of these, but I'll keep it short and sweet here. So mentorship and sponsorship. Again, we can have like a whole entire webinar on this. Having a mentor for me skyrocketed my learning. And so I found someone within my company, a gentleman, Stephen Gladney. We met once a week for an hour to talk about all kinds of things, what problems I was coming across in my code, how to solve them. For the problems I did solve, why did you do it like this? And then just showed me a whole different way of thinking about it. Here are some other things you should focus on, other languages you should think about. And then he also advocated for me and then pushed me to advocate for myself. So, and there's a lot of stuff behind this. We could talk about like how to find a mentor, but the key thing is that having a mentor will really, really launch your learning and help you to accelerate a lot more quickly. Next thing is corporate style projects. So the random gift generators, the random cat generators, they're very cute and they are a good way to show your personality. But if you're putting together a portfolio, think about the things that think about things from the perspective of the recruiter who's looking at maybe 200 different portfolios for a single position. They have to make these tough decisions about who to weed out. And so make sure you have a few projects in there that are buttoned up and they showcase your skills as they relate to what the company is looking for. And also make them look like they're something that a company would hire you to build. So an eye-opening book that I'd recommend that will help you to get into recruiters' heads is called What Color is Your Parachute by Richard Bolles, I think it's pronounced, Bolles. All right, so next, toot your own horn. Not just toot it, like blast it. So I know it's uncomfortable for a lot of people and it can feel kind of braggy to be talking about what you're doing all the time. But a mindset shift that worked really well for me was to think of it as part of my job. So part of my job, like one part of my job is to do the thing. The other part of my job is to tell everybody that I did the thing. Nobody else is responsible for letting people know what you're working on, and it's going to be essential for everybody to know all the great stuff that you've been spending your midnight to 1 o'clock hours working on. Nobody's responsible for that but you. So make sure you get comfortable doing that. Another thing that I did was I started inviting people out for coffee, and I made it a goal. And you can do virtual coffee now, but made it a goal once a week to meet with a different developer. And I would ask questions like, tell me about your journey in engineering. How did you get into it? What made you want to get into it? Just show them what I was working on and ask for feedback. And you'll learn a ton. You can also network, maybe find different job opportunities and even a mentor. And then lastly, immerse yourself. So being the type of person who I describe as a squirrel, I get distracted really easily. And I wanted to make sure that because I had a limited amount of time and a finite number of goals, I needed to make sure that even my procrastination time was centered on getting toward my goals. So even if I was distracted, I had different things on my phone, different coding games and things like that that I could work on. On my commutes, I listened to podcasts like Syntax FM, Front End Happy Hour. So every moment of my time was spent immersing myself in either learning or achieving one of the primary goals. Okay, and so that is all that I have. If you're looking for me, one of the perks of having a unique name is literally I can have my first name as a handle for anything. So want to find me on Twitter at Shaundai, GitHub at Shaundai, Dev at Shaundai, Instagram at Shaundai, LinkedIn at Shaundai, you get the point. So thank you so much for having me and look forward to connecting with all of you.
Shaundai, thanks so much. I really appreciate your perspective and sharing your story. Now we're going to switch to our next speaker, but one quick announcement. A few of you had trouble seeing Shaundai's slides, so if you're still having issues with that, you may need to leave the webinar and then come back in, and that should resolve the issue. If you're having any trouble hearing the audio or seeing slides, also the webinar is recorded, so if you missed any portion of it, you can catch the recording later, and that will be posted on our website and on our YouTube channel later today. Okay, now I'm going to switch the presenter and we're going to turn it over to Will and hear more about his story, and I'll let him fill in all the details.
It looks like Google didn't save. These aren't the right slides. I changed the title and stuff.
Oh, okay, we have somebody else sharing your slides. So if you want to just take a minute to send the updated slides, Will.
Okay, hold on.
And while we're doing that, there was a question or two that came in for Shaundai. One was getting more details about the courses you took. Shaundai, can you talk a little bit more about that? If there are any recommended courses that you found especially useful?
Yeah, so I started with, because I knew that I wanted to do front end, at least starting out, and I'm also trying to eventually make a pivot to doing full stack. Anyway, so I started with Codecademy, their web development path. And so if you sign up for Codecademy Pro, I think I paid maybe $100 and something for 6 months, which is really great. And then being a pro member, you get access to all of their courses, whether it's Python or whether it's JavaScript. And what I really liked about it is that they have a hands-on approach. So they'll start you with the fundamentals. You won't really understand like why you need to know stuff until you get further down the path and you're like, oh, this is why I needed to know what a class is. But it takes you through when you do different exercises, and then it will test your test whether your test whether your code is right or wrong along the way. So it gives it to you in small incremental steps. Also, anything from Wes Boss has been really good, JavaScript fundamentals, and Scott Talinsky. I'm big fans of both of them.
Great, thanks so much. Okay, I think we have the right slides now, Will.
Yeah, those are right.
Okay, great. Thanks for your patience.
So I guess I just say like next slide or something when we go to the next, want to go to the next
Sure.
ones.
Yeah.
All right, cool. All right, so hey, my name is Will Johnson. This is Building a Community to Build a Career. And this is basically my story of how I went from working in factories to, now working in tech and having a job that I love. So next slide, please. My name is Will Johnson. I'm a community marketing engineer at Egghead.io, which is a web development education company. You can find me on Twitter at WJohnsonIO or WillJohnsonIO, then on GitHub at WJohnson85. I'm a husband and a father of 6 children. I wrote a book called Break into Tech with Twitter, basically how you can use Twitter to get a job in tech. I host a podcast where I talk to other people about how they use social media to be able to get careers in their or get opportunities in their careers. I also blog on technical and non-technical topics, and also actually teach web development topics on Egghead as well. I'm also on Twitter way, way, way too much. So next slide. So this is the start of my journey. My journey starts with pain. So this was the factory I was working out. I worked here for about 3 years. I was a temporary employee, so I had no insurance. I couldn't miss a day. I couldn't be late, or basically I would get fired. But it really didn't pay that much, and it wasn't the best place to work. The work was super, super boring. It was unfulfilling. As you see, those cars would come by, and I would do the exact same thing on those cars, 430 times a night. And it was usually the exact same amount of number of cars in that 8 hours. So I definitely knew how long or how many cars we were doing, and it even made the day go longer because when you would see 200, and you're like, wow, I have 200 more to go. So a couple of years into working there, I had a moment where I was like, forget this, right? And this moment started with, go to the next slide. And when this is my daughter when she was in kindergarten. She's a daddy's girl, and we've had a close relationship. And she wanted me to come to her school for her birthday. She wanted me to bring some cupcakes, and she wanted to show all her friends her daddy, right? She was really, really excited about this. And I had remember asking the supervisor, I was like, hey, can I get a day off? It was Friday. Can I get Friday off so I can go to my daughter's school and be able to celebrate her birthday with her? And the supervisor looked at me and he laughed. He said, "You're a temp," and smiled and walked away. Like that was it. Not missing a day, not being late, not causing any problems. Um, that's all I got was a laugh and a walk away. So from that moment, next slide, I knew I needed to make a change, right? I knew that I needed to do something different and take control of my life and be able to do something better for my family. So, um, I tried a lot of different things before I came to web development. I had started a YouTube channel to see if I can, make money that way. Me and my wife, we started a cleaning business to where we would go to people's homes and pitch clients and, make money that way. I got a second job. Me and my wife started selling t-shirts on Shopify, and I was constantly searching for some type of way, something I can do to do better for my family because I feel like they deserve more and that I could offer more to the world. Next slide. So I had went to actually another factory, and this one was a little bit better. They actually paid quite a bit more, and I was able to get insurance and things like that that I needed for my family. But this one had 12-hour shifts, so I would get like more days off. But it was still long, it was still super boring work. As you see, I was covered in powder every single day because it was like a food ingredients factory. So I think it was like 600 boxes every day. I would put powder in these boxes, push it along. Here comes the next box. Same type of really boring, repetitive type of work. But during this, like I said, I'm still searching. I'm still finding what can I do to do better, right? So I came across this forum post, and in the forum, a lot of people were saying they were taking a web development course on Udemy. At that time, I didn't really know what web development was, and it was Coach Steele's web development course. So I looked into it, looked at what web development was, looked up the salary, and I remember thinking, Udemy, this is, kind of sketchy. It's $9 and you're saying I can make six figures. So I wasn't 100% too sure on it, but I was like, it's $9. I can give it a try. And I remember telling my wife about it. Like, she was really happy. She said she was relieved. She felt like, this could be the thing that, gets us out of this situation. She was super excited. But one thing that I had against me is that, I didn't want to go to college. I didn't want to get in debt, really. I didn't want to get in debt to go to college. The college part, I really didn't mind. I didn't want to get in debt. And I know that I didn't know anyone in the technology industry. Everyone I know worked at factories, call centers, those type of jobs. So I knew that I had to do something different. Next slide. And one quote that I like to remember is that no one can make you feel inferior without your consent. And that basically means that, a lot of people may say that, oh, you can't do this coding thing or you can't get into tech without knowing people. And I don't have to agree with anything that those people say. Without my consent, their opinions and feelings and whatever they have to say, don't matter. I knew that I could do this, so I focused on not, listening to what they had to say. So the thing that I did to be able to build a community, because I knew that that would be my way in, was meeting people, is that I went to Twitter. Next slide. So anytime I did something on Twitter, if I was reading a book, I would post a picture of it and say what I learned. If I was taking an online course, I would take a picture of my laptop or screenshot it and post what I was learning. If I went to a meetup, I would be in the back or wherever I was, and I would talk about what they talked about at the meetup, and I'll make sure I would tag the speaker and things like that. Next slide. And then if I was listening to a podcast, because I listened to Simtax by Wes Boss as well, I would post that and, what I learned from that episode. Sometimes I would do like a summary, things like that. I would actually reach out to other people who were learning the code. I would see people were having issues if they needed help with something in JavaScript or something like that. And I would, give them, what solution I may had and, send them a link to a resource. This last picture, was saying it's time to dig more into React with a picture of my laptop. And as you see, the timestamp on that one was 4:30 a.m. Like, I would do this stuff before work. So I would bring this all together. It's like people that I would meet, whether, we met on Twitter from, interacting with each other, I would make sure they will follow me. If I met somebody in real life, I will make sure they will follow me on Twitter. And that way they could always see what I'm doing. So this allowed me to like always be like on their radar, but without saying anything. They would always see like, oh, he's learning this, he's learning this, he's doing this, he's doing this. I was always popping up because I was always doing something. And what happened was people started to advocate for me. People started to send me DMs saying, hey, my job is about to hire. Would you be interested? Or, I have this opportunity over here. And it just really became like a lot of people started like becoming like part of this team that would like try to sell me to other people. And one of the jobs that I ended up applying for, I had like 3 referrals from the company. Someone brought me a letter of recommendation. I was able to get the interview, but what happened is that I actually didn't get the job, and they said they wanted to go with someone with more experience. So I was hurt. I ended up tweeting about that, just not anything bad, but saying like, man, I'm really working hard, not really getting anywhere. And then the founder of Egghead actually reached out to me, and we actually followed each other probably a couple of months before that. And then when he reached out to me, we met over a Zoom call. We chatted. I talked about my struggles. He gave me some advice. And then I kept after that, I didn't. And another thing I want to make clear is that when I'm talking to people, I'm not asking anything from me. I'm always focused on the other person and what I can do for them. I never ask for anything. That's kind of like the key to all of this stuff. I never make ask. And it's not a bad thing. I just think that reciprocity, people will come back and bring you things when you least expect it. But anyway, so for a few months after that, me and him, we communicate every now and then. Most time I was showing my work on Twitter. So go to the next slide. So about in October, I think, of last year, he sent me a DM, the co-founder of Egghead, saying, what salary am I trying to get to, right? And I got excited. I'm like, yo, I might finally be out of this place. I might finally be out of this factory. I got really, really, really excited, right? So I remember walking around with my head up at the powder factory, just thinking like, yo, I'm finally about to get out of here. So I told him what number that I wanted. And then I actually didn't hear from him after I told him what number I wanted. You can go to the next slide. So I was upset, really, really upset. I thought like, man, maybe I asked for too much money. I was like, I'm never gonna get out of this place. I really started to be down on myself. And I remember telling my wife, like, maybe I'm meant to be, at these factories. Maybe I'm meant to be stuck here. So then I had started actually a boot camp here locally in my city that had an apprenticeship program after the boot camp after 6 months. So I had started that boot camp, and I remember asking my supervisor at the factory, I was like, these classes interfere with my work schedule. Are you able to see if I can get some days off? Or not days off, I needed a day off, like to switch with somebody else so I could go to these classes. And a lot of my coworkers were like, yes, we'll switch with you. I'll help you out. A lot of people are willing to help me out so I can do this. And the supervisor basically said that no, he can't do it. He's not the one that makes the rules. So I actually was not able to take advantage of that opportunity. And then after that particular situation, when I got told no about trying to work out this schedule, um, a week later, the co-founder of Egghead sent me another message and was like, we can do that number. So if you want to get started, let's get the paperwork going. Next slide. And this part of my story is called Happiness. This is actually one of my like favorite movies ever. But yeah, I remember how it felt to get that offer and be able to walk out of that factory for the last time ever. And next slide. And these are 5 of my 6 children. And yes, you see they are happy. We were able to move to a new home. I work remotely. I'm able to spend time with them. I'm normally never tired like I was at those other jobs. And, everything is just completely better. And I'm glad that, me and my wife took these steps and, grinded and sacrificed to get where we are. Next slide. So my favorite tips to share with you for someone who is trying to break into tech, I would say document your journey, even if not for somebody else, for yourself. So that way you can see how far you've gotten. When I was creating these slides, going back and seeing all of my old tweets and thinking like, wow, this is, some of these tweets were in 2018. I'm like, this is way completely different world than I'm in now. So document your journey just so you can see your progress so other people can as well. Reach out to people that you want to work with. There's people that you see online that are like cool and doing cool things and have good attitudes. Reach out to them. Tell them that you appreciate, what they're doing, with that content that they're putting out. Just, try to connect with them on a human level and help out people on the journey with you. Tech is huge right now. Tons of people are trying to get into tech. Everyone's trying to get into it. So meet other people that's on that journey. Share resources. Connect them to resources that you may have. If someone knows, a skill that they have, like if they're good at graphic design and a developer who needs graphic design, connect them together. Make opportunities for other people, and also create content to show, what you know. Create a podcast where you take 5 to 10 minutes talking about JavaScript array methods, or how to lift up state and react, or whatever the thing is that you're learning. Create content to show people what you know, because that'll help you stand out outside of the other candidates, because you want to be more than a resume. All resumes look the same. They all have the same font. They all say things like passion, detail oriented, ambitious. Like you don't want to like get in the crop of all that. You want to stand out. So creating content, showcasing what you know, is a lot better than cookie cutter resume. Nothing against resumes, but you just want to go above and beyond, because most people are doing the bare minimum. Next slide. And I just want to say, at the end of this, you got this. If you're trying to make a change into tech, I 100% believe that you can. And I'm also here to help. If you have any questions, you can hit me up on Twitter at WillJohnsonIO. I'm on there way too much. You can view my GitHub at WJohnson85. And if you want more in-depth stuff about, how to use Twitter and what things you can do to get opportunities, my ebook is available at breakintotech.dev.
Will, thank you so much. I really appreciate your story, both you and Shaundai, for joining us today. Now, we've had a few technical difficulties, especially with our next presenter, Lennart. So Lennart, I'm going to pass you the controls to see if we can get your screen sharing working. And as we work on that, we had a couple questions come in for Will and Shaundai. A couple people said, thank you so much for sharing your stories. One person just bought your ebook, so that's great. And a question came up about Shaundai, thoughts about how to find a mentor, especially if you're not already connected at a company with software developers, or maybe someone might be unemployed. Do you have any thoughts about how to connect and find a mentor when you don't have those connections already existing?
Yeah, that's a great question. So ways that I found people outside of my organization was, and if you're in the US, I don't know if it works outside, but there's an app called Meetup. And how it worked previously is that they would people who wanted to start groups or different social clubs could start a meeting, and people who were like-minded could go and physically attend like these lunches and things like that. They've made a shift, obviously, to doing a lot of the stuff virtually. So I would say join Meetup if you're in the US, or if you're in a country that has access to Meetup or something similar, and join clubs that have people who are like-minded. I found that most of the developers that I work with are heavily using Twitter, just like Will, and also using Dev. So I would start reaching out, like use hashtags. I used the code newbie and 100 days of code hashtags, and I actually found a lot of great friends on Twitter. And that's actually how I got linked up with Gatsby in the first place. So use hashtags, comment on people's stuff, and eventually you'll start to build a network, and then feel comfortable like DMing people, asking them. Don't feel weird about going out, and maybe it's from my sales background, I just feel more comfortable asking a ton of questions and meeting new people, but just don't feel uncomfortable getting creative and finding new ways on the internet to meet new people.
Great, thank you. And one question for Will. Appreciated you mentioning Twitter. Any specifics of how you feel Twitter helped you out in finding a job?
Sure. I mean, what it did is it got me in contact with the founder of the company that I worked for, and we were able to connect before. This is a quote that I like, build the well before you're thirsty, right? So it's not like when we met, I wasn't looking for a job, but we had a relationship. So when he was ready to hire, I was already there because we had met prior to that. And then even with a lot of other people that I met, it was never in a way to like look for a job. We were just, you know, interacting as people. So when opportunities came their way, they were able to share them with me. So I think that Twitter helped me do that because it allowed me to show my work. Like Shaundai said, she said, don't be afraid to toot your own horn, blast it, right? I was able to do that without like directly telling people. So it made them see what I was doing and build that trust to like, oh, okay, he's really working hard. So let me try to help him out. Twitter was my way to toot my own horn.
Mm-hmm. Great. And Lennart, I'm assuming we're still having the same issues as before and you're not able to share your screen?
Yeah, correct. But I sent my little slides over to Aaron, which he can share, and then yeah, tell a bit about it. I
Okay.
guess.
Okay, great. For the live demo, if we're not able to share Lennart's screen for the live demo, we will record it and send it to everybody on this webinar later. So just to let you know, we will still make sure you get that information. But for now, we'll go over Lennart's slides. So Aaron, I think I made you the presenter. Real quickly, I'm going to launch our last poll. And this is something Lennart will be talking about. So Gatsby's new file system route API is a faster way to get started building with Gatsby, means most route creation won't require you to use Gatsby Node.js, uses square and curly brackets in its file names, or all of the above. So go ahead and take that poll, cast your vote, and we'll give you just a few seconds to do that, and then we'll go into Lennart's slides. Okay, we're starting to get a few more votes now. I'll wait till we're over 50%. So just a few more seconds to cast your vote on what is Gatsby's new file system route API. Okay, I'm going to close the poll, and it looks like most people are on top of this and all of the above. Yes, it is all of the above. So if you're looking for a faster way to get started with Gatsby, then you'll want to check out our new file system route API, and Lennart will be talking more about that as well.
Hello everybody. Today I want to give a demo of how you can get started with Gatsby using the new file system route API, the new Gatsby plugin image, and a couple of other features we just shipped. My name is Lennart Jörgens. I'm a senior software engineer at Gatsby. You can find me on Twitter and GitHub, of course, and I myself started learning React with Gatsby. I really liked it because it offered a playground for me to try out things quickly, like different styling solutions or remote APIs. I also work on open source projects, including free themes for Gatsby, which you can find at the URL there. My agenda today will be the live demo only. We will create a new project from scratch using a new CLI. Then I will give an overview of what the CLI just created. Functionality will be added through plugins, including writing Markdown files for our notes and accessing Instagram to see some pictures from my account. Then we will use the file system route API to create pages for the notes and Instagram posts. And then lastly, I will also dive a bit into the new image plugin, which is currently in beta. So heading over to the demo part, I'm here now in terminal. For getting started with Gatsby, you need to have Node.js installed. And additionally, if you want to also use our image plugins, which uses Sharp under the hood, you will also need to have some build tools. For the Mac, which I'm on here, it's enough if you install the Xcode itself or the Xcode command line tools. Then you should be able to build images. So you can use npm init Gatsby, and then it will ask you a bunch of questions. First, the folder name you would like to use, then what CMS. In this case, we don't want to use one. As we want to use Tailwind, we will choose Post CSS here. And then lastly, you can add additional features. In our case, it will be Markdown support. Then in the final step, it will ask for confirmation, give an overview, what it will do, and then normally you press start. In this case, I press no because I already have that set up. Okay, so this is the state that you will get thrown into after the CLI initialization. It will install Gatsby, React, and React DOM and create a placeholder index page. Gatsby has the convention that you have to use source pages folder and then place your valid React components in there. You can write JavaScript here, but you can also write TypeScript here. It works out of the box. Since we chose to also use Post CSS and Markdown, it also installed the necessary plugins for that and automatically added it to the Gatsby config file. This is the central place for your plugins. As a short explanation, a transformer plugin takes the data that the source plugin ingests and transforms it. So in this case, the Gatsby source file system will look into source pages, put that data into the internal GraphQL data layer of Gatsby itself, and then if it finds Markdown files, will also transform those. The Post CSS plugin uses some Node APIs from Gatsby to add the necessary features. Since time is short, I will jump over to the next commits. And in this commit here, I added the necessary Tailwind dependencies. I also added typography because it's a very nice plugin from them. Added the new Gatsby plugin image, which is currently in beta, so that's why it's at 0. And the other necessary image plugins. Similar, I also added them to the Gatsby config file, and here you can see I also added the source plugin for Instagram. It will take in some environment variables from me and then get that data. I also already added under the path we provided here our Markdown files. It has a front matter of date and title, and then the content itself. Our index page is still the same. What we now expect to see while I started the development server in the background is our boilerplate index page and our Markdown files inside our data layer. So that's the boilerplate page, and then you can go to localhost 8000 __ GraphQL, and you will be greeted by graphical, which is a graphical interface for accessing the data layer of Gatsby, which I can highly recommend, and I also use it all the time. On the left, if you don't see that panel, you can click on Explorer and you will be greeted by all the internal queries that Gatsby gives you. In this case, we want to choose the all markdown remark query, and then nodes, and then let's say date and title. We will be greeted by the data we expect now. If you're having troubles understanding this, I highly recommend following our main tutorial on our website, because it will go in more in depth what Gatsby will generate in the graphical data layer. Another tip I can give here is that you can use the code exporter. For our page query, we now can copy paste this here essentially and have an overview of our pages ready to go. Since I want to make this more fancy, I will check out the next commit, and here I edited the index page to use the query we just looked at. Then Gatsby has a magic prop called data in each page, and with data you can access the results of the GraphQL data. So we create for all markdown remark and nodes, and as you can see in the result, nodes is an array, so we need to iterate over it. We will list an unordered list of those nodes, and if we head to the home page, we see, hey, here are our nodes. Okay, the next step now is to use the file system route API to create individual pages for it, because only looking at the title isn't fun. We also want to see the contents of it. Okay, so let's expand it a bit here. The key to the file system route API is to understand that you now are able to use both of curly and square brackets to notate GraphQL queries in the file name itself. So traditionally you would have used Gatsby Node.js, queried for the data in kind of like this shape here, iterated over the nodes, and then called the create page function to create an individual page out of this template here. You now put the whole logic of Gatsby Node.js into the file name itself. For static pages, they have to begin with curly braces, then followed by the model name, in this case markdown remark, followed by a dot, and then the individual fields. What we want to do here is so this is all still in the source pages folder. We want to create individual pages with /nodes/ the title of the node. We can check that by accessing one of those, and voila, we see the contents of the page. So how did that work? So Gatsby under the hood created those pages for us, and what we now have to do in this template here is use the ID that is passed along with the query to filter for the exact same markdown file we are interested in. The filtering part is here. And then from that individual markdown file, we want to get the date and the title and the HTML, and we output it here. Again, data is accessing the results of the GraphQL data layer here. That is something that Gatsby does for you. I also mentioned that you can not only create static pages with the file system route API, but you can also create client-only pages, which is here. Client-only pages are, as the name suggests, only rendered on the client. So these are not created at build time. You can use those for authenticated pages of your app. You can use those for individual fallback pages. So let's say you have a greetings section and then a defined list of names, and then someone accesses an URL that doesn't exist in your build. Then you can create a fallback here and say something, hey, your entry doesn't exist, yada, yada, yada. So in this case, what this means is if we go to greetings and then, for example, my name, we will be greeted by hello, Lennart. Because with the square bracket notation here and then the name will be passed as into the params object in the props, and then we access it here. If you look into the documentation for the file system route API, you will also see that you can also define splat routes here, so ... to create even more complicated client-only systems. In the last step now for this demo, I want to show the usage together with Instagram. For that, I used also the file system route API, and again with same with markdown files, I also accessed the field here, insta node, and then the timestamp. I also added some components here for better visuals, and if we switch over to the index page now, we will be greeted by something that I made more fancy. But the important part here is the Instagram overview. So in the index file, we query for the Instagram nodes that we get from Gatsby source Instagram, and then as usual iterate over it and display it. I built a custom Insta component for that, and if we look into that, we will see that it uses the currently in beta Gatsby plugin image, which is our new and upcoming plugin that will be the default in the near-term future. So coming back to the file system route API, I use the timestamp here. So if we look at one of those detailed pages now, we will see, hey, Instagram / and here's the timestamp. So it's the same as with the markdown files, only that we defined different GraphQL types here. And that's pretty much it with the demo part itself. Thanks for listening to it. Again, here are my social links if you have any questions about it. And I also open sourced the code for this demo, which you can find at the link below. The individual commits I just jumped to are also annotated. So if you want to follow this process, you can also see that. So I added some notes to the README here, if you need more information, and a live demo is also available under this URL. Yeah, thanks for listening.
Thanks, Lennart. And like we mentioned, we've had a few difficulties today, so we will make sure the demo is recorded and sent to everybody on this call. So thanks for being understanding and flexible to everyone. We have a few more questions for Will and Shaundai. So also keep putting in your questions, especially if you have any technical questions for Lennart, while we have our last 10 minutes here. So this was a question for Will about how did you get the courage to contact people such as owners of a company and so forth? Were you ever concerned that they would just ignore you?
That's a great question, and some of them did. Like, if I'm being honest, like some people I would, send them a message about, something, and they, I would not, hear from them at all. But it's I guess that's like just part of, the game, like, Michael Jordan hasn't hit all his shots, LeBron hasn't won all his championships that he's played in. So not everything you do is going to be a home run, but I do think something that you can do is try to like get your chances better is to be a value add. Like, don't go in directly asking for something. Like, try to build a relationship another way, whether that's, hey, I really liked what you did with X, or I listened to a podcast you were on and I resonated with this point. Because one of the things that we connected with, me and the co-founder of Egghead, was that we both like to read books. So we would like share books with each other that he may not have read or I might not have read. So so try to be a value add as opposed to just going in and asking somebody for something. So a value could either be a compliment or just something that you could share with them to make their lives better or easier.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thanks, Will. Okay, this question is for Lennart. It provides a little bit of a background for someone who's at a company who's considering moving from WordPress to Gatsby, but they don't currently have people that are experienced with JavaScript or these types of frameworks. How much in-depth coding is required to work on a new Gatsby project, or how difficult is it to get started?
Yeah, great question. Thanks for that. So moving from WordPress to Gatsby isn't per se a total move, because you can use our recently released GraphQL plugin called WGraphQL. And this will expose a GraphQL API from your WordPress instance, which you then can access via Gatsby with the new Gatsby source WordPress plugin. And this way you would keep your usual WordPress instance and interface that people used to. Since you mentioned your folks don't have a lot of experience with JavaScript and React, I would say it's definitely necessary, because what you will mainly do is building React components. And since you still have access to things like ACF, you don't have to build a complete page builder per se, but you will need to be able to build React components, I guess. The whole handling between getting data out of WordPress to Gatsby is handled by our plugins we provide, so that is handled. I hope that answers the question. If not, feel free to DM me on Twitter or on my social.
Sure. Maybe a follow-up question to that is talking a little bit about a headless WordPress Gatsby solution, and is that possible?
Yeah, that's entirely possible. So the nice thing about this is that your headless WordPress instance will only serve or will be your API. So if people try the usual of finding your admin access to WordPress on your live production site, it won't work because your production site won't have any trace of WordPress at all, because at build time only the API from WordPress will be accessed, but WordPress won't serve the front end at all. That's all handled by Gatsby.
Thanks, Lennart. One clarifying question: when you send out the recording for the demo, will you be covering GraphQL?
Yeah, I will. It's necessary to interact with GraphQL at the moment in Gatsby, and I will explain how it fits into our page creation and in general our data layer.
Mm-hmm. Great. And this next question reminds me, Aaron, if you could share the last slide with the CTA for how to get started with Gatsby. And it's the slide that I had sent you. So if you're wanting to get started with Gatsby, we have a great getting started tutorial at gatsbyjs.com/tutorial. I'll put the link in the chat window and we'll show it on the screen in a minute as well. So we just have a few minutes left, but another question for Lennart. Let me get to it. What are some recommendations you would provide for anyone wanting to learn more about JavaScript, React, and Gatsby? So are there any books that you'd recommend or any podcasts or other resources?
Okay, let's see. That's a broader question. Then let's tie it into more focus to Gatsby then, I guess, because learning JavaScript is a wide field. For Gatsby specifically, I know that you can, depending on what type of learner you are, there are a bunch of video tutorials, both paid and free. On YouTube, I know there's a really popular Gatsby code camp. I think if you search for it, you will find it because it has a lot of views. Then also Wes Bos published a paid tutorial. He covers integration with Sanity.io, so a headless CMS there, and all the bells and whistles of Gatsby itself. Then our tutorial itself that Lennart just mentioned tries to not assume too much knowledge. So if you're just getting started, I'm confident that you can follow it. But other than that, yeah.
I think you listed a few great starting points there. Yeah. Another question is, does Gatsby have a sweet spot in terms of website size, such as a new site with 10,000 pages or 50,000 pages? Is there some considerations people should take into account on the size of their site?
Currently, we are testing our benchmarks for 100,000 pages, and some customer sites we have on Gatsby Cloud are also in that ballpark. So it's certainly possible. However, at that scale, it largely depends on, or not largely, but a considered amount of how it will perform relies on how the individual structure is. So if you use, for example, a CMS that we support with incremental builds on Gatsby Cloud, it would be totally feasible. If you can't or don't want to use that and that CMS, it might be more difficult. But we are certainly working on having larger and larger sites. And for now, our benchmarks are at 100K. And those, you can find those sizes at will it build, will.build. Yeah.
Great. Thanks, Lennart and Will and Shaundai. I really appreciate all of your time, and thanks everyone for joining the webinar today. We will send a recording of the webinar and include the live demo that Lennart was planning on giving, but we'll include a recording to that demo in the full webinar recording that will be sent to all the registrants later today. It'll also be posted on our website and on our YouTube channel. So that will be coming soon. Again, thanks everyone, especially for your patience as we work through a few technical challenges, and have a great day.